Catherine Soehner is the Associate Dean for Research and the Director of the Eccles Health Sciences Library. She has 35 years of experience in librarianship, with 25 of those years spent in named leadership positions. Her research interests are focused on change management and leadership, with publications and presentations focused on systems thinking, conspiratorial thinking in the workplace, and assessment of library programs. She has given over 70 presentations and published 2 books, one on effective difficult conversations in 2017, and the other on strategic planning in 2019. The committee some on the committee had heard Catherine speak, and were very impressed with her ability to be uplifting and encouraging and positive. So we are thrilled to have Catherine talk for us.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so does this work? I think so. All right. Oh, it's so nice when people clap before I've even had anything to say. Right? Like, that's really swell. Thank you. I feel so honored to be here today and have been asked to speak to you and get you started for the day. I wanted to talk a little bit about internal psychological safety, and I came to this topic because in preparation I looked at the Academy's website for this symposium, and it says, education, it's so much more than what happens in the presence of our learners. And I really like this quote because it reminds me of the many hours I have spent preparing for a class. Many of you can relate, right? And I would worry, do the examples show what I want to teach them? Do the problem sets challenge them to actually use their new skills and knowledge? And so, more and more preparation, right? For me, there's prep work even beyond preparing for the content of the course. There's also some internal prep work. And I noticed one of the topics being discussed today is psychological safety in the classroom. What does it take? What are the techniques? How do I know I've achieved that? What does that look like? And for me, that external psychological safety is more attainable when I have an internal sense of safety within. So external psychological safety, what we want to create in our classrooms, right, often exists when people can say what they think, how they feel, their new ideas, without recrimination or judgment or some kind of shaming, right? So we want people to feel safe to say what they're thinking. And before I can build this kind of safety in the classroom, I feel like I need to have an internal psychological safety, meaning that I accept and welcome what's going on for me, right? So maybe someone has said something to me and I'm instantly angry or irritated, or I'm terrorized that maybe they're upset with me, right? They've been critical of my performance. And that just shatters my internal psychological safety. And what I want to do is move from that internal turmoil, be accepting of that, welcoming of it even, and move to quiet confidence. I got this. I can hear what's going on inside. I welcome that, and I move to quiet confidence. Can I hold myself steady no matter what is going on around me is really the goal there, so that as feedback comes to me, I can hold myself steady and model that psychological safety that I want to create in the classroom. I'm not entirely off book yet. This is a somewhat new topic, so I am relying on some notes. And so, just as there is more to education than what happens in front of our students, there's also a lot happening when we get up there, right? Our students are having reactions to the content. Some of that we can, and in fact, many of us, if we've been teaching for a while, have found ourselves in a heated discussion, an actual debate happening in our classrooms suddenly, and maybe even criticism of our performance. Now, some of these reactions we can anticipate, right? Especially when we start talking about things like women's health issues or sexuality, family planning, end-of-life care. We can anticipate that some of our students are going to have reactions to this content. But sometimes our students surprise us. Who knew that kidneys were going to be such an important topic and someone was going to have a reaction? We don't always know what's going on for someone, right? And so being aware of the reactions of our students and being able to take that in, again, and move to that quiet confidence. Students want to have the confidence their professor will not let the classroom fall into chaos, right? That the teacher has that composure, that quiet confidence and that centeredness. And if we can model that internal psychological safety for our students, we also give them tools to find their own quiet confidence. So what I'm trying to get across is instructors are modeling for the students the kind of composure for handling difficult material without losing their cool. And it requires a certain amount of preparation. Let's see if I can do this. And the interwebs have given Aristotle notice for this, whether that's true or not, but that's what the interwebs told me. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And that's one of the things, it's one of the keys to building that quiet confidence. All right, so I have to tell you that as I mentioned, one of the things that just crushes my internal psychological safety, this is a work in progress, right, is someone being critical of my performance, right? And that's because I was an A+ student. I was an overachiever. I came to be an employee and I was an A+ employee, overachiever, right? I get lots of kudos for that. And then suddenly I'm in a leadership position and people are critical of my performance. And you know how that is? If you're an A+ student, you get a first C on a test, you're like, crush, like, how did I get a C? How is anyone upset with me? Well, Dr. Good, you probably heard him say this, our senior vice president, feedback is a gift. Isn't that a cute little present, all wrapped up in a nice little bow? Lovely, right? And when I heard him say this, I was like, Dr. Good, you have not heard the kind of feedback that I've heard in my career. Feedback is not always a gift. In fact, sometimes it seems much more like a flaming pile of poo left outside my doorstep. Clearly for me, not much of a gift. So here's an example of the kinds of feedback I've received. Starting with, you really could have done that better, all the way down to library administration is not listening to the people on the front lines, right? So now that I've received feedback, how do I maintain that quiet confidence when this is what really shatters me, right? And luckily there are people who are specialists in this area and have written a book called Thanks for the Feedback, The Science and Art of Receiving Feedback Well. And if you look at the teeny tiny print, it also says, even when it's off base, unfair, poorly delivered, and frankly, you're not in the mood. So it's an easy read. I highly recommend reading the whole book, but if you're like me and don't have a lot of time, I want to bring you to one of the core principles in this book that really changed my way of having that sense of quiet confidence. And it's this phrase, tell me more, right? So Douglas Stone and Sheila Heen invite us to move from, well, that's just wrong, to, tell me more about that. Give me more. Give me an example. And it's helpful for me and my library colleagues, so I'm hoping it will be good for you as well, is to think of feedback the way we think of a question being asked. So when I'm at the reference desk or at a front desk and someone runs up and says, I need to know everything there is to know about AIDS in Africa, what we do as professionals, we start asking questions. Well, what do you really mean by that? Which country in Africa? Do you mean men, women, children? Do you mean heterosexuals, someone who's part of the LGBTQ community? What do you know, when we start going down to narrow, and there's no anxiety about that moment. There's no fear, there's no anger or irritation. I'm just curious. I'm all curiosity, right? And that's a great way to move into that tell me more. It removes the sting of what might be going on around me and encourages me to just get curious, right? And we as humans, not because we're bad or stupid, but because we're human, we speak in really broad sentences like, tell me everything there is to know about AIDS in Africa, right? That's way too broad. But we say those things, again, because we're human. This is how we communicate. And so getting into that curiosity can be really, really helpful. So in a leadership position, people will often say to me, everything is falling through the cracks. Everything is wrong. Nothing is right. Right? And so they're up here talking because they're frustrated, right? They might be irritated. And so what they talk about is something really big. But nobody really knows what that means unless we can move into tell me more. Give me an example. And so I want to use myself as an example throughout this short little talk here. And one of the best ways that I can describe this is I was in charge of a big reorganization in a large library, 150 employees, and every single person was going to be touched by this reorganization. And so we communicated the heck out of this, right? We sent emails, we held focus groups, open forums, town halls, all staff meetings, we sent out surveys, like we were communicating the heck out of this. Right? And then I met with one of my direct reports, and she said, I don't know what's going on. And so I said, yes, you do. You do too know what's going on. Have you not seen the emails, focus groups, open forum, town hall, staff meeting service? You do so know what's going on. I mean, seriously, bad moment. This was not my most shining moment, and I highly encourage you to avoid that level of defensiveness. So, after a bad night's sleep, went down to her office the next day and apologized. It's like, look, I was defensive. Can you tell me, you said this phrase, I don't know what's going on. Can you tell me more about what that meant for you? And she said, sure. I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm confused about a decision and the timing of the announcement, and I just don't like it. This is way more information than that broad statement, right? So that's how we speak as humans, right? We say, I don't know what's going on because we're frustrated. Not because we don't really know what's going on, but because we're frustrated about something. And so asking, tell me more, brought me to some really different and interesting, like what was going on in her mind when she said that? Now, number 1 and number 3, can't do much about those. I may not like it either, but here we are. But I'm confused about a decision and the timing of the announcement. I was able to have a really good conversation with this person about that particular item. And so it moved me, even as I asked the question, tell me more, moved me away from being defensive, brought me into curiosity and into that quiet confidence, that sense of, I got this. It's, even though she may not be happy, I'm not going to melt. I'm going to be all right. And she's going to be okay. So in any case, that was my moment of still a work in progress, right? And this, I think this tell me more really is for me a cornerstone of internal psychological safety. It gives me a moment to take a breath when I get curious. Allow those feelings to settle and move into, now I'm curious, I want to know more. If I could have done this better, what would it have looked like if I had done it perfectly, right? So asking people to give more. And I also think it's important to recognize that I'm gonna screw this up. This is not gonna be perfect every time. I'm gonna miss opportunities. And in those moments, there's an opportunity to apologize and model what it's like to have the strength to admit when we're wrong. And move on. Like, okay, now that's done. And we can move on. All right, so I just want to emphasize that curiosity is in fact one of the primary aspects of getting to that internal psychological safety. And I had a high school teacher once say, curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought her back. And there she is, looking particularly cute. All right, and I am a librarian, so a cat must make an appearance in all PowerPoint presentations. All right, so I want to bring us back now to what I began with, which was this education. It's so much more than what happens in the presence of our learners. And as I reflected on that quote, I also began to ask myself, why am I here? Why is education an important thing for me? Why do I invest so much in it? What brings me back? What brings me to this symposium? And one of the more unifying themes among all of us who have been through some level of education is that there's generally at least one educator who made a difference in our lives. I want to invite you to think about that person right now. Maybe it was a teacher in grade school. maybe a professor in your graduate program, a mentor in the clinics. As you go through today, I want to invite you to ask one another about that educator that made such a difference and be inspired by knowing that we make a difference. And so I want to use myself once again as an example. The professor that really made a difference in my life is Dolores Daniels. She was my nursing professor. She was in psychiatric nursing, behavioral nursing, and as such, she was extremely direct, which kind of threw people off. Some people loved her, and some people just hated her because she just told it like it was, right? And in Ohio, where I grew up, being nice was a really important aspect, and she didn't have that. So she kind of shook things up, and we called her Danny. Now, I was on the camp of I loved her, not I hated her, but in any case, there she was. And I was an undergraduate student in nursing, and so I was in a hurry to get things done, get my A, and get the heck out, right? And Danny, being that she was in psychiatric nursing, said, if you're going to miss my class, I want you to tell me directly. I'm like, all right. So I go running up to Danny, and I'm like, hey, Danny, I'm going to miss your class on Thursday. Can I make it up? And she said, no. And I, of course, was just, so upset by this answer. Like, well, what do you mean? And she said, my class is primarily discussion. If you are present, the discussion will be different. If you are absent, the discussion will be different. You can't make it up. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, don't give me a life lesson here. Oh my God. I'll get the notes from Sarah, is what I said, because I was a snotty little undergraduate, right? I was 20, 21 years old. And I was there to get my A and get the heck out. Fine, I'll get the notes from Sarah. Oh my goodness. But the life lesson really did sink in, right? This was someone who really had a prominent impact on my life. And it made me think about, where do I want to spend my time? What's important in my life? And this came to mind particularly as I was helping to raise my stepdaughter. And she was in second grade, and there was going to be a 45-minute second grade play. And I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be the longest 45. Maybe I'll just go to the third grade play. But then I remembered Danny's words to me, and I was like, oh, but next year she'll be in third grade. She'll be a year older. It'll be a different play. She'll have a different part. I need to go to the second grade play because it only happens once. She's only in second grade one time in her entire life. That's it. So I went to the second grade play. But it is for me also another cornerstone for psychological safety. I understand and I claim my presence in this world. My presence matters. And this advice became especially poignant when my sister Anne was murdered by her husband back in 1990. It's been 33 years, and still saying those words catches me. Her absence makes a difference. Certainly has made a difference in my life. And in the end, we really just don't know how long we have on this planet. So let's show up and let's be welcoming of all the things that come through our minds, our joys, our sorrows, our pride, our hope and our strength. Let's bring it all. Let's welcome it all and help ourselves move from inner turmoil to quiet confidence. Let's listen intently to others. Be curious about where their quiet confidence is coming from. And listen to our own internal voices. Let's bring all of those things. Let's bring our truth and welcome this moment. And I want to share with you just a few lines from this poem that I know you all have heard by Marianne Williamson, Our Deepest Fear. And she says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond all measure. Our presence matters. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Our presence matters. So enjoy this day. Get to know one another. Be present. Bring your whole self and be welcoming of that. And I thank you so much for your attention for this moment. So thank you. Also, you'll notice that I was short on time, but I did that same high school teacher who said curiosity killed the cat, satisfaction brought her back, also would say, now, when you give a public presentation, stand up so you can be seen, speak loud so you can be heard, and sit down so you can be appreciated. So there you are.